I want to look a little more at behavioral interviewing because that is the most common. In behavioral interviewing, there are two types of questions they may ask you. One is they're looking for positive evidence or a positive outcome, such as, tell me about a time when you were successful in leading a team. But they may just say, tell me about a recent team experience. And so what I always tell managers is, if you ask a candidate a question, their response should always be positive in nature. So for example, if I asked you, tell me about a recent team experience, and you tell me, oh, in my comm studies class, I'm working with these three people, and I tell you, they don't know what they're doing. It's been really tough. I've had to do the majority of the work, but I got it done. If you start giving me that kind of example, that's not going to be a very positive example, and you're not going to really get a good rating on it. Even if you've worked with people that were difficult, never say, well, they were incompetent. They didn't know what they were doing. You can say, we had some challenges working together because their schedules were very different than mine, but never outright be negative about somebody else. So the majority of your responses to questions should be positive. But sometimes during the interview, candidates can look too perfect. But we know that we all make mistakes once in a while, so they may ask you a question that is called contrary evidence. And it would sound like, tell me about a time when you were unsuccessful in meeting a deadline. Because they know that we've all had areas at times where we have not lived up to the ideal. But the important thing is that you have situations you can talk about. Behavioral interviewing is all about specific past experiences, not generalities. So if I say, tell me about a time you led a team, and you say, well, when I lead teams, what I typically do is I bring the team together and I talk about the goal, and then we go out and we get it done. Well, that's really vague, there's no specifics, and it's not going to be a good example. But if you can tell me, last month at work, I was put in place to lead a team to market a philanthropy event into the Fort Worth community. If you start talking about a very concrete, specific example, it's going to have a lot more power than just talking about what you generally do without being specific. Those examples can come from the classroom, they can come from involvement on campus, in the community, at jobs that you currently have. They should not come probably from family experience, boyfriend, girlfriend experience. Those should really be off the table. Other types of questions you may run into would be fact-finding questions. Do you know how to use Excel? But more than that, and you say, yes, I know how to use Excel. Well, I always tell interviewers, make sure you ask another question. Well, tell me, what features have you used in Excel? So that you can really drive down to see how well they really know something. And then lastly, there are self-assessment questions. And you've all heard what's your greatest weakness? And that's really looking at how well do you know yourself and what your strengths and weaknesses are. And the question I have here that I like to ask students a lot and others is, what is something you do that tends to frustrate other people when they work with you? Employers want to know that you know your strengths and weaknesses and you know how to work and manage those so they're not an obstacle to your success where they're at. So that's what those self-assessment questions are. If they ask you what's your greatest weakness, you may be tempted to say, I'm a perfectionist. I am so perfect and it drives people crazy. Well, employers are on, they know that answer and they know it's trying to make a negative into a positive, and that's not what they're looking for. They're really looking for a genuine assessment of where you fall short. But more so, they're looking to see, what are you doing to improve in that area? So whatever your weakness is, you should be doing something to help manage that weakness so you can talk about that to an interviewer.